John, let's go first to this latest development there. There's been a shooting incident near the Rafah border with Egypt. A member of Egypt's security forces has been killed. What can you tell us?
Yes, Gemma, in breaking news, there's an escalation of hostilities now on that border at Rafah, as you say, and this is crucial because Egypt is a long-time peace partner of Israel, as is Jordan. They've had decades of peace agreement. So any clashes on that border is of great concern, and it is really worrying Israelis, from what I've heard. What's happened is an Egyptian soldier opened fire on some Israeli soldiers. The Israeli soldiers returned fire, killed the Egyptian. And there are now reports of 20 or so men, armed men, around that border between Egypt and Gaza who are involved in some sort of armed conflict. We don't quite know who they are yet. But the growing instability at that border is of great concern. Some of the Palestinians have said that they believed that Israel's strategy was, in the end, to hope that the Palestinians in Gaza would go through that crossing into Egypt. That's the view of some Palestinians. Israelis deny that, although some of the more right-wing Israelis have talked openly about what wonderful real estate we could get in Gaza, beachside real estate, should the Palestinians leave. So the real pointy end of all of that tension is that very border. That's why the killing of this Egyptian soldier is so important. And let's bear in mind, some of these people in Gaza could be refugees 3 times over. They left Israel when it was founded in 1948, forced out at gunpoint. They then went from the north of Gaza to the south at the urging of the Israeli army when this war started. Then the Israeli army said go from East Rafah to West Rafah to a safe zone. Those 45 people, mainly women and children, burnt to death yesterday, were in the safe zone. That's part of this tragedy.
Tell us about the Israeli Prime Minister's response to that strike.
Well, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu has said it was a tragic mistake. The odd thing about that is that hours beforehand, his defence chiefs were saying this was a precision and targeted attack. It can't be both. One of them's not telling the truth. And so because of the world outrage, the Israelis are now saying, you know, this was a mistake. It may have been a mistake, but they also said the same thing about the killing of those aid workers, including the Australian, Zomi Frankham. They said that was a mistake. And again, the problem with that, if you're looking at it sceptically and analysing what they're saying, they had targeted that aid convoy 3 different points along that road. How is it a mistake if you target somebody 3 times over 45 minutes? And so I think that Emmanuel Macron has come out very strongly overnight, and he says he's outraged at this latest attack, and he's saying Israel should cease immediately bombing. Of course, the Australian Prime Minister is not saying anything nearly as strong as that for various reasons, but it's now the world, a lot of the world is just saying that after 8 months of this, it has to stop, you know, and the NGOs are saying the pictures are so horrible. Charred children burnt to death. They'd gone to bed at night in tents and they're burnt to death. So I think the world is now really reacting badly against this.
And the EU, John, saying it could soon reactivate its border mission. What's meant by that?
Well, the EU has been talking about possibilities of what they can do in terms of possible peacekeeping. That would have a lot of sort of logistical problems involved there. The United States is saying that the President is examining whether this has crossed a red line. Let's not forget that the US warned repeatedly about the Israelis doing stuff in Rafah because the 1.6 million people had all moved into Rafah to get away from the fighting in the north and the centre of Gaza. Now, this is exactly what Antony Blinken and President Biden had said. President Biden had said you cannot go into Rafah to the Israelis unless you have a credible plan to protect civilians. This is not a credible plan to protect civilians. They'd moved exactly the way the Israeli army had said. And so I think the Israelis under more international pressure and more isolated than they have been, I think, for a long time.
Finally, John, where does this leave hostage negotiations?
Well, it looks like hostage negotiations have completely crashed. They were sort of going along with difficulties. The head of the CIA, William Burns, has been, shuttling between Egypt, Qatar, Israel and the US. But it now looks like, because of this latest bombing in Rafah, it looks like they've completely been put on hold for the moment.
John Lyons, our Global Affairs Editor, thank you.